issue discussion paper on the benefits and risks of CBDC, says Jerome Powell. So Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said the government body is moving forward with research to implement a central bank digital currency. In an announcement from the Fed today, Powell said the Federal Reserve Board would be issuing a discussion paper sometime this summer calling for the U.S. public to comment on issues related to payments, financial inclusion, data privacy, and information security, while the Fed chair said crypto was not a convenient way to make payments given its volatility. He was seemingly more open to stable coins and a central bank digital currency, or CBDC. Our key focus is on whether and how a CBDC could improve on an already safe, effective, dynamic, and efficient U.S. domestic payment system, said Powell. We think it's important that any potential CBDC could serve as a complement to and not a replacement of cash and current private sector digital forms of the dollar, such as deposits at commercial banks. According to Powell, designing a CBDC in the United States would require input from the public and elected officials, given that it raises important monetary policy, financial stability, consumer protection, legal, and privacy considerations. The proposed discussion paper would complement the Fed's research into the risks and benefits of issuing a digital dollar, which has been ongoing for the last several years. He added, irrespective of the conclusion we ultimately reach, we expect to play a leading role in developing international standards for CBDCs, engaging actively with central banks and other jurisdictions, as well as regulators and supervisors here in the United States throughout that process. And Powell has spoken extensively about the possible ramifications of the United States releasing a CBDC, stressing that he believed it was more important to get it right than it is to be first. And in February, he hinted that prior to a digital dollar rollout, the Fed would engage with the public pretty actively, but did not roll out the project first going to lawmakers. So, this is from Cointelegraph, but here's the thing, right? Like, they've been talking this for a while, but you also got to understand too, share this if you want someone to see this that doesn't understand things, but the thing that you got to understand really is that with how the U.S. money system is, this is technically what's already going on in a sense, right? Like your banks, all the banks around you don't actually have money really in their system, right? They have numbers on a screen. That's basically all it is. And they could change those numbers at any given point. Like, it's a really weird and messed up system when you really start to do research on it and dig into it. It's like they're basically already creating money out of thin air, which is exactly like these ERC20 tokens, right? Like Shiba Inu coin or all these other meme coins. That's basically what the US dollar is. Now, obviously, the US dollar has mass acceptance, right? Because, it's basically reinforced by the strong arm of the United States military. And I'm not saying necessarily that it's a bad thing or a good thing, but that's basically why we could do this, right? And I'm just worried that if they do end up going this route, right, which is probably also one of the reasons why they're trying to regulate other cryptocurrencies so that people have to rely on their CBDC, which their cryptocurrency, right? It's just going to be it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening, because in the grand scheme of things, this is kind of already happening with the US dollar. Like, the US dollar is basically already a CBDC, right? Because you can't just go to your bank and ask for all of your money out of that bank, especially if you have a large amount of money inside a bank. Like, let's say that you have $1 million in a bank, in your bank account. You cannot go to your bank and be like, hey, I want $1 million cash out now, right now. I want my money, right? You can't do that. They will not give you your money. They will not give your money in cash. They will not do that. Why? Because your money doesn't actually really exist inside that bank, right? It doesn't really exist in the system. It's just numbers on a screen that's being lent out to other institutions that are then lent out to other institutions, which are then lent out to other institutions, which are then backed potentially or insured by the federal government with basically money that they're just going to create out of, air, right? So it's honestly crazy when you really think about it. If anyone ever stumbles upon this in the future, like start doing some research on how the banking system works, because when you look at it in any with any time frame of just like looking at it and like kind of analyzing it, like how like you're really lazy and you're like eating chips and doing something else, you could still end up seeing just how messed up the banking system actually is. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think this honestly is going to be more so the future. I think it's going to be something like, back in the old days of like sci-fi kind of stuff. I believe in one show, the currency that they used to buy stuff was credits. It was called credits. And it's just like, anytime you like did something, it's just called credits. Actually, you know what? I think I remember the show. I believe it was an animation show called Cowboy Bebop, which was discontinued, right? But I believe within that show, which I think it was made in like the early 90s, what they used for their currency, and they're like traveling through space and all that kind of stuff, right, to different planets, was called credits, right? And I could see something like that happening and also being named or created in that form where they're going to call this credits, right? These are just credits. So like 1,000 credits could be, a burger, right? 1,005, maybe 1,500 credits is going to be, a gallon of gas or something, right? Like I could see something like that. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to actually end up happening. I do like how cryptocurrency is actually going up again, right? But it's just going to be interesting to see what happens, because a lot of people have different views on cryptocurrency. A lot of people have different views on what the governments are going to be doing, but it makes sense that, like, it makes sense for like the United States to create something, of their cryptocurrency, and then, China has their own cryptocurrency, and then, Europe has their own cryptocurrency, and then, South Korea has their own cryptocurrency, right? Because then they don't have to do anything dealing with these whole paper transactions where people could end up paying things in cash, but also it allows everything to be tracked, right? Because the government likes to control everything. They also don't like people not paying their taxes on stuff, and they want to be able to access, okay, like, is this person trying to like money launder? Is this person trying to like evade paying taxes? Like, what's going on here? What's going on? What can we do to stop this? Well, if everything is digital, everything's going to be tracked, and they're going to be able to see, okay, this is where the money went. This is how much money transferred. This is all the details. We know everything about this situation. So it'd be almost impossible for anyone to be able to run away from this, because everything will be verified and tracked by their government issued cryptocurrency, right? So I can see why they would do something like this. I can see why this would also basically influence them to increase the regulations on cryptocurrencies so that their cryptocurrency is more viable, kind of like strong arm the whole issue. It's just, I don't know how many people are truly going to be willing to accept it. It's like the same thing with like electric cars, right? Eventually, it's probably going to go down that route where every car is going to be electrical. But how long will it actually take for people to adopt that way of thinking or that way of life, right? Like, it's not going to be an instantaneous kind of thing. It's going to be something that's going to take decades, right? It's going to take decades for people to actually adopt that to the point where the majority of people are going to be doing it. So I don't know how they're going to do it. I just kind of feel like there's going to be a lot of issues with this, but it makes perfect sense as to why they would create a CBDC.